Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Adam Old Man Winners here. I'm Joe Gould, and we're talking about the Horror of Frankenstein from 1970.
The horror.
Oh, talk about going out. I can't decide if it's going out with a bang or a whimper.
Well, it goes out with a chuckle and a shrug, I think.
Oh, Adam, before we get into that, I am in great pain today.
I'm sorry.
I got back yesterday from taking my dad to the doctor, and I was opening my car door in my driveway, and a wasp almost flew into the car. And I was still in my seatbelt, and my body convulsed in a reflex, and I injured my side. I felt the pull, and I had to take a break and lay down today before the podcast. It's quite painful. I
so
injured
when the
myself
wasp
getting
is a
out.
seatbelt.
Well, I don't know. My body moved one way, and the seatbelt did its job. And were I not confident that I pulled something right there, I would probably be on my way to a hospital, because all of the important organs are on the right side of your abdomen area. All the ones that can have catastrophic injury, plus the liver, is all in that one spot. And apparently they all feel the same. But,
Huh.
I've always said that one day I'm going to be killed by a bug. I'm going to be old. I'm going to be scared. I'm going to have a heart attack and drop. I never thought that I would pull a stomach muscle, though.
Well, I guess you are retired. That's when, as soon as people retire, sometimes they start keeling over, so.
But I always suspected bugs had a lot to do with things. But, I don't know. For the record, it didn't get into the car. But, small victory. So how you doing? No near-death experiences lately?
Well, I don't think so, other than the fact that I did slice the back of my hand on some of the wood paneling that was recently put into the library where I work in a renovation. And it's just the sort of thing where I don't even think it's real wood, but the way it was cut, they can have some really sharp edges, and they can have just enough little ridges in them that if you just make contact the wrong way, it's like a paper cut, but a lot more severe. So that was rough. I had that thing bandaged up for about 48 hours. And
did you report your injury?
No, I didn't skip any work over it, so.
Oh, as a former operations manager, if you're on the clock and you're injured at work, and especially if you're injured by your work equipment, which would be your wood paneling, I suppose. Workman's comp, man. Workman's comp.
Well, I'm also a believer in the concept of hurt versus injury. So, at least.
Well, I hope they paid for the Band-Aid.
Well, I did use their own supplies to bandage up with, so yeah, there you go.
Okay.
The office supply.
Self-treating is a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully you don't require medical assistance, because at the 24-hour mark, that's when OSHA gets pissed off.
OSHA's in danger of being thrown out now with the Chevron doctrine defense. The Chevron defense doctrine running out of gas by the Supreme Court. We shall see what happens there.
I feel like there should be a happy medium somewhere between common sense and absolute stupidity, and I don't feel like we're going to achieve either.
Oh well.
Yep. Anyways, the Horror of Frankenstein.
The horror.
So, I feel like this was a mixed bag.
Well, where should we start? Casting or set design?
I think we should start with Jimmy Sangster.
Jimmy. He wasn't in this movie.
This guy, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to give him credit for the wrong things. He was the writer, a big-time Hammer films. And I believe he wrote pretty much all of the films in this series. I want to double-check my notes on that real quick, make sure I'm not confusing him.
I would have thought Terrence Fisher wrote one
screenwriter.
or two. Okay.
So he was a screenwriter on all the movies. Whether he was the sole screenwriter, I don't want to go that far. He was a screenwriter and all these things. And he was offered the opportunity to rewrite a script that had been submitted to Hammer by Jeremy Burnham. And initially, this was basically just a straight up remake of The Curse of Frankenstein with Peter Cushing, the one that started it all. Well, Sangster declined, but then Hammer sweetened the deal. And he had always said that you should never have the same person be the writer, the producer, and the director, because much like government, you have your checks and your balances.
Mm.
So they offered him this role, and he happily accepted. And he rewrote the movie, and that's when it became kind of a black comedy / semi-parody movie of the original film, Curse of Frankenstein. And I think that's where we should start at. I think there was a nugget of really good idea there with making it a black comedy, so to speak, and not doing a straight up remake. And I think Ralph Bates was great. He played the role. If that's the role, he did great. But I think I saw an interview with Veronica Carlson, and she expressed her dislike or distaste for how it just went over the top, and that a good horror film should kind of be played like there was too much humor in all the wrong places, so to speak, and it just kind of fell flat. And all the things that we really enjoyed in The Curse of Frankenstein, in terms of really feeling sympathetic in some ways to Victor, is completely lost in this film as a result.
Well, he's not a sympathetic character in this movie.
And he's not trying to be. And as a comedy, it works a little better. Like, I don't know if I don't think the right move would have been to remove all the comedy, but there probably was just like a little bit too much. And we should say it's not straight up comedy; it's underlying comedy. Like they're playing it straight. They're not acting as if they're saying funny lines, I should say. As I think I mentioned to you in a text, it feels very much like a Monty Python Frankenstein movie to me.
Yeah, I can see it. It would seem that Victor's the only one who realizes everything's a joke, and everybody else is playing the part earnestly.
Yeah, no, that's probably true. You have a simpleton, you have the vixen, you have Veronica Carlson, who is playing really a dumb character when you start to think about it. She had a really good role in the previous film for the Frankenstein series, much more serious. And here she is, basically really upset that she's being rejected by this evil man who mistreats women.
Well, she's gotten the worst end of the stick in the whole Frankenstein franchise because she got forced into participating in an on-screen rape scene that she didn't want, and then her character really had no agency after that. And here she just really does. This is probably the dumbest female lead. I feel like she takes a little bit of a back seat to Elise, the housekeeper, in this movie. But she really does get strung along by everything. And
I mean, I will say she's a female in a horror film that lives at the end. So I'll say that. History says that had she gotten what she wanted, she probably would have been killed.
Okay. Now, Elizabeth lived in the first movie, too, Curse of Frankenstein. She didn't. She got shot in the shoulder by Victor.
Yes. But I'm just talking about Veronica, or this character in this film, which is an entirely different character than the one in the first one. Well, yeah. I guess, like I said, we say this is a reboot or a remake. Like, I think that's a stretch. I think enough got rewritten where it loses a lot of that.
So there's no familia connection between Elizabeth and Victor in this movie.
No.
But
you have the maid, you have Elizabeth, no longer a relative, but an old schoolmate.
Mm.
You have what's his name?
There's no Carl. There's no Hans.
No, you have the new one though. What?
We're talking about Wilhelm, who's playing the lackey.
Yeah. You do have a new lackey, again from school. I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not remembering a Stefan type character.
Well, those are Victor's innocent schoolmates, I imagine Stefan may come closest to the scapegoat, or in various movies there's a scapegoat. In Created
Yeah.
Woman, it was Hans.
Well, I'm thinking strictly Curse of Frankenstein. I don't think he had
Oh,
anyone
okay.
who protected
Sorry.
him from bullies and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, anyways, I think you can loosely call it a remake, but I think you can call any horror or any Frankenstein movie a loose remake because they all follow basically the same plot.
Unless they follow the book.
Well, so Jimmy Sangster admitted in an interview that he had never read the book, so he's off the hook on that.
I don't know if anybody at Hammer had. They do have a Henry in this movie, which is a very prominent character in the book, but plays entirely different. He's the lieutenant in this movie, Becker, Henry Becker.
Okay.
And, boy, it just feels like all these characters, and none of it really pays off in the end. There's no real reckoning between the different relationships. And, Victor is at the center of everything. Victor never gets his comeuppance. And he really never has any real climax confrontations with anybody.
Well, I guess you could say he loses everything at the end, all that he's worked for.
He's still in his castle. He could do it. He could go again.
Yes, but his work. That's all.
Yeah.
Oh, and he will go again. And yeah, so I never saw any box office stuff on this. I'm assuming it didn't make any money.
It was presented as a double feature with one of the Christopher Lee Dracula movies, Scars of Dracula. I think they aired them together as a package.
They did, because this was entirely British backed. They didn't have any American money in the production, and so that was part of the deal. Was they would make it a double feature, and then they had to complete both of them before they could even look for a distributor. So I think it was basically, I want to say, so the wiki confirms if it's right. That's roughly £200,000 per film. So
wonder if they reused some of the set designs between the two.
They reused sets from 2 other movies, and I don't think I wrote notes on that, but it was in one of the things I read. So they just finished 2 Hammer films, and then I think a Dracula and a Frankenstein movie, and they reused the sets for these 2 movies. Or sure, they tweaked them some, and this movie got shot over 6 weeks.
I think it's a good looking movie as far as just everything about it. There's nothing I look at and say that looked terrible, except maybe some of the dead body props. They look a little spongy or rubbery.
I think makeup was by Tom Smith, and he gets 4 thumbs down. This was this has to be the worst looking Frankenstein, right? Other than the one that really wasn't a Frankenstein.
Disagree.
As a monster, this was pretty lousy. Oh goodness! So in the movie, Frankenstein needs these parts, and it's like, think of like a paint by number sheet. If you drew a picture of a man on a piece of paper, and then you used a marker to like make it in sections, and then you put the number on the section, paint a certain number. So think of that as a black and white. There's this giant one on the wall. Well, what they didn't tell us was that that this was a portrait of the actual monster minus the numbers. They basically took they took Darth Vader, they shaved him, and they took 2 Sharpies, a red one and a black one, and outlined stitching across his body, and then put a dog collar on him, and that's your monster. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me when I'm telling lies.
Now, they didn't put a whole lot of work into the design, but I think that works in the favor of this movie compared to some of these other creatures that we've seen in the Hammer series. Most of these creatures fail because, number one, they don't look that great, even though they're trying to make them monsters. And number two, they don't work because they're trying to build up Victor Frankenstein as a master scientist, surgeon, everything else. This, at least, when you got David Prowse in hardly anything, but basically just David Prowse with an inflated cranium, it gets closer to what they want us to believe, that Victor is a very good stitcher of human anatomy, that he can put together something that does look human, but at the same time, is very
You
unsettling,
there?
and you would not want to be cornered
Hello?
with this thing.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, I can hear you fine.
All right. Hey, you kind of dropped out there. Can you repeat if you can hear me?
Well, now it says I'm reconnecting.
You're reconnecting now?
Yeah.
Louisville internet. So,
No,
so you're saying it shows the artistic ability of Victor.
it's not a whole lot
Go ahead.
on film, but it fits the narrative they want to tell. And David Prowse is great when we get to actually see him doing his thing instead of covered up in a monkey suit. You know, I like the monkey suit.
I agree. I agree with that. The monkey suit could have been a little better. Like, less is more sometimes. What can you say? But so my problem with this is that it didn't look like he was multiple bodies. Like,
oh no, it didn't.
So I think an easy fix, all right, would have been to use makeup to make some different skin tones on those different sections.
Works, yeah. I buy that.
And it would have looked 1,000% better.
None of these movies have made that kind of effort on the creature.
But when you're literally using a Sharpie to draw stitching, like, you need to do a little bit, right? Like,
I agree.
They explained away, in a lot of these movies, they explain away the monster not being elaborate based off the type of transformation. It's like, he created a woman, which basically just transplanted a mind,
Mm-hmm.
He did that a couple of times, actually. He put it, mind in himself. There's a lot of it, like the transference of the consciousness was a lot more of what these movies were about. You had Christopher Lee in the original when he actually had the cutting up the bodies and putting it back together again.
Yeah.
And, these bodies, they're talking about how they're not in good shape because they've been decomposing for a while. But they look pretty fresh to me,
Oh, that they do. And there are so many dead bodies and parts that Victor has to work with in this movie. It's a bit of an embarrassment of riches. He's got not Vincent Price, but whoever the actor named Price, who's the gravedigger, even though his wife does all the hard work. He's going around and he's
Dennis Price.
Dennis Price. They're going around in their wagon looking for drowned passengers who drowned on a ship that sank, and they're washing ashore and they're loading them up and they're hauling them over to Victor's mansion, and he's just hauling them upstairs. He's got them all laid out like it's his eBay haul or something on the ground.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Absolutely.
Goodness.
Oh, I can hear myself fine. I can hear you fine.
You back?
I haven't left. I've been hearing you the whole time. Oh, I got a reconnecting come up.
Well, we're not going to make this a 2-part series. We're just going to plow through it. And
Tuesdays in Louisville, rough day for the internet. I tell you what.
I remember back when we lived in the same building, and y'all were upstairs from me and the wife, and I would walk up there and I'd turn the light on, or whatever it was, and your old roommate would say, it takes a while for electricity to travel all the way up the stairs because there'd be like a 2-second delay.
Yeah, it's
true. I
feel
like your internet's having a little bit something similar here.
That's true.
So which version of this movie did you watch?
I don't know about multiple cuts. My only way that I own this is the Voodoo Fandango digital copy. I never bought it on disc.
So, side note, I don't think I'm ever going to call that Fandango at home. It is Voodoo for life.
What an odd Fandango. That's like a name that's taken too. Like Voodoo was its own thing, spelled with a U.
I think they played that off of the Blu-ray spelled with a U, but I'm not really sure. It still was a weird name, but like it kind of became the brand. I feel like if you're going to buy it, you should get the name. Just say Voodoo by Fandango.
They did, but they want to brand it further now. They want to put their. They just couldn't abide.
Screw them. All right, I agree. So I got the Scream Factory Blu-ray, aka Shout Factory. Let's see what year this came out. 2019. I recommend it. It was not that expensive. You get 2 aspect ratios, widescreen, full screen.
Huh.
You get audio commentary by a film historian, Bruce Hallenbeck. I don't care about that. You get gallows humor, inside Horror of Frankenstein, so a little mini documentary. You get an audio commentary, a vintage, with Jimmy Sangster. and Hammer films the story of Marcus Hearn. And you get a vintage interview with actress Veronica Carlson, who actually is in the Gallows humor section with a more updated interview, where she basically says the same thing. And you get a trailer, but who cares about that?
Huh.
So, nice, solid feature. Like, if you want special features, this is one of the better ones that, honestly, all the Shout Factory stuff for Hammer films has been pretty good so far, but this is up there. Pretty good. So, apparently, there was a US version versus a British version. This is mentioned in one of the interviews. And the only difference that I noted, or that they mentioned, was in the British version, when he's showing his new lackey his experiment where he brings the hand to life. You get a peace symbol in the British version with the two fingers. But apparently in the American version, only one finger is lifted. And I don't know which one, but I could see it being the middle. I don't know, based off the humor in the film.
What an odd edit.
It is a very odd edit. But I don't know if there's any other changes or not, but that was one little small one they mentioned.
He doesn't use his teeth for anything, like Cushing did in one of the other films?
Not that I'm aware of. Might be worth looking at it a little bit more. But I don't think that version... I looked for it, and I couldn't find the finger scene. Just that edit. I figured, if something's easy to find, that'd be it. So I don't know that it's really... whatever the American version is, I guess it would have been whatever aired on TNT or...
Well, it's shortly after they revive it's shortly after he fries Wilhelm. He tricks him into grabbing the cables, and he flips the switch.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, and then his grave robber brings him the big haul, so he's got all the pieces he's putting into his jars. That's where I thought the hand looked really foam rubbery. It looked like the fingers were collapsing on themselves when he picked it up.
So I think we're talking about two different scenes. I'm talking about the one prior to them leaving the university.
Oh! Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what scene you're talking about, unless you just moved
hand
my
in
scene
the jar.
To a different
he had
place.
A hand in a jar.
Yeah. Not that. The one where they do the electricity, he's showing that he can bring the hand to life. Or at least make it move.
Okay. How about his little stint at the university there, where he gets one of
the part of the first 30 minutes really is where it feels like a Monty Python series of sketches. Like, they're moving, like, wham, 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 like, new scene. Like, they're pushing this story along pretty quick.
Yeah.
And the university scene is not very long.
He gets the headmaster's daughter pregnant, I think, and then they work out a tentative arrangement where he's just going to go ahead and marry her quietly to avoid all appearances, and he out of there. So
yeah, he's like, I guess I'm graduating early.
Yeah. He tells Wilhelm they're just going on holiday earlier, but he said, nah, I'm not going back. Huh.
Wilhelm's an idiot.
Well, especially, I think my favorite Wilhelm scene is when he meets Elise when he comes to the castle the first time, and he's like, oh, wow, that's your housekeeper? And then Elise is serving him the dinner, which Victor's not impressed with. And he's talking about how you're going to make, she moved his stuff into his father's old bedroom, and he said, well, everything else is in order, right? The bed warmer. And, Wilhelm doesn't follow any of this, and he has to come out and say, I have the strangest feeling I'm not understanding something, or I'm missing something. And it's like, man.
He's missing something the whole film.
Oh, boy.
But, yeah.
And the fact that I guess he even holds those two clamps in each hand, that's a no-no. Making yourself a temporary conductor of a circuit.
Yeah. So, we're bouncing back a little back and forth here, but when he kills Wilhelm, it seems to me like he kind of has a perfect body going there.
Yeah.
Like, was he just too lean of a character to use most of his body, that he only wanted his hand, and just one of his hands, by the way?
Well, the other thing I'm curious about is, what does Victor do with all the parts he doesn't use? Does he put any in storage, or does he just pick one and throw the whole rest of the body into the acid vat?
I'm pretty sure it's the acid vat.
Why wouldn't he use a giant refrigerator? He's he's putting all his eggs into one body here. Yeah.
Well,
He got to get it
that's an
right, or he's
evidence thing.
got no other supplies.
Yeah,
And then he
budgets.
kills his grave robber, so he cuts off his supply chain.
Yeah. So I guess we should say that his lackey in this movie is attracted to Elizabeth. So in this film, he obviously does not get the girl.
He doesn't even make a move at it either.
No. So one of the critiques of this movie is that David Prowse's monster is functionally like a brainless tool.
Mm.
But I don't think that's quite right. I don't think he gets enough credit. I think there's a reason why he does not harm Elizabeth. What do you think it is?
Well, I think they want us to believe that, but we're assuming that Professor Heiss is the brain in the monster, right?
Correct.
Because Victor has a very prominent scene where he's thinking about the cranium of the professor.
Yes. So I think it's because he's her father, and that's why he takes her and gently puts her back in. Well, I guess he doesn't take her to the back of the bed. He gets Victor who puts her back there. But I think that's the reason why she's not dead. And he also doesn't kill the little girl, the daughter figure, at the little house thing. And that little girl who says he was actually a pretty nice monster.
So it's hard to read the whole scene at the cabin. What exactly does he do with the kid? It seems like she first says he hurt me, but then does she change her story?
I don't know. It's possible that she scared him.
Okay.
And he stumbled and dropped her or something like that.
Okay,
maybe
sure.
imply that they're making an implication that he killed her, and then we quickly find that that's not what happened, and you're a little confused.
Yeah.
And she's definitely scared. And then later, when they're at the castle at the end, she makes a comment after she accidentally kills him. She pulls a cord, and the monster, which was being hidden in a vat of acid, gets all the acid. Well, he's hiding in the vat. She pulls the acid down on him. But he says, well, he was a very nice monster. She didn't know she killed him either. But
that whole scene is odd. There at the end in the castle when all the people converge into Victor's lab.
Very Monty Python-esque.
But again, no real resolution, no satisfaction, other than the monster dies, and Victor's like, oh well, curse is foiled again.
Yeah, like Saturday morning cartoon. Pinky, he is the brain, and that kid was Pinky.
It does have that episodic quality, the way it ends. Like you just think, oh, freeze frame, shrug, roll credits. Tune in next week.
Yeah. So what did you think of the tortoise scene?
Old Gustav, I know that people on the internet today probably find that the most traumatic of all the scenes in the movie. I like the fact that he celebrates with giving Gustav some alcohol to drink. That was kind of funny at the end of it.
Yeah, so a little context. They're successful in a small experiment, and they're going to proceed to live animals or dead animals in the morning. And because of that, I think he has a plan already to steal this turtle. So they go and have dinner with Elizabeth and her father. They steal his pet tortoise, which he's so proud of, wandering around the castle. And then they kill the tortoise. They give it some kind of injection. And then they have these electrodes that they're trying to do. And the lackey says, where do you inject the tortoise? Or that's the first part. And where do you inject the tortoise? They're trying to figure that out. Victor said that. And then the lackey's like, where am I supposed to put the electrodes? And Victor says, stick one in the front and one in the back. Bound to make contact somewhere.
Why not?
And then they fry the thing with electricity, and it bites Victor on the finger. It's back to life. And then they do the celebratory drink, and we don't see the turtle again.
They said they were going to sneak him back in if he lived. But
I think we both know that Victor ate that turtle. It's an interesting scene. Another missed opportunity for a Cujo or a Pet Cemetery angle in a Frankenstein film. They just don't want to take advantage of those.
We had a dog, a chimpanzee, and a turtle. There's potential there.
That's a Saturday morning cartoon, if I've ever seen, man. Like,
Yeah.
that's a whole movie. That's at least one movie.
The Subjects of Frankenstein. The Pets
Frankenstein's
of Frankenstein.
Pet Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery. Yeah. Works.
It's the original Frankenweenie.
Yep. Maybe Tim Burton was inspired by these movies. Seems likely. How many people does Victor himself kill directly in this movie?
So he shoots a hoodlum.
Yep. Then he chops the head off to make sure.
Yeah, for to keep. Which that head does not look like the head used later, by the way.
Yeah, that it does not.
It actually wouldn't have been that hard for them to kill David Prowse at some point.
That's an odd thing. They didn't stick with that.
They could have used him in that scene.
Yeah. Why not?
Even
one less guy you got to pay.
I mean, you could give him a wig and a beard. It wouldn't have to look the same. So anyways, he kills that guy. And then he kills Elizabeth's father.
By poison,
By poison. Kills Wilhelm by electrocution.
Yeah.
Or you could say stupidity. All these people walk into these things for the most part. Then he kills the grave robber.
He
kills the grave robber's wife.
Into the acid.
Yeah. And he uses the monster to kill the grave robber's wife.
Yeah.
It was intentional, so we'll give him credit for that.
I've forgotten how Elise dies in this movie. What does he do? The monster, right?
He throws Elise into the cell with the monster because she threatens to blackmail him, and he says, "Well, you could blackmail me better if you saw what I was doing. Why don't you come look?" She's like, "Okay."
So just like Justine in Curse of Frankenstein, they repeated that.
Pretty much. And then I think that's it. The monster killed somebody, but it was on his own. It wasn't really. Can't really blame Victor for that one. I mean, you can, but not. It wasn't like he planned on it.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Quite a body count.
So do you think this movie is better than any of the Peter Cushing Frankenstein films?
You enjoyed it in a different way because, if you want the humor, you have that. But I'm inclined on my enjoyment scale of this series to put it right in the middle of the tiers, of the top tier and the low tier on the Cushing films. Not because I think it's necessarily heads and shoulders better above the bottom tier, but just as something of a middle ground between everything else.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a very different movie. Which one did we decide we hated the most out of the Peter Cushing?
Well, you like Evil of Frankenstein a lot more than I did, because I'd put it bottom, but...
I think I put it mid.
I'm thinking Must Be Destroyed is close to the bottom for both of us. For me, it's probably second from the bottom.
So Must Be Destroyed is the one where he's trying to get the secret from the other guy.
The drug smuggling.
Yeah.
And the blackmail.
Yeah, I think it's better than that one. But it's definitely not top 3 or 4.
Now, in a lot of ways, it's better because, it is the plot of Curse of Frankenstein. Real close. But just done in a little bit different way.
Yeah. I mean, this movie would have been pretty bad without Ralph Bates. Just the cards on the table.
Yeah.
You would have to have a very unique character in this role. Like, I don't think Peter Cushing would have done well in this one.
The one thing I like about Bates is that he's the kind of character you believe that the young adolescent Victor would have grown up into when we saw him in the early scenes of Curse of Frankenstein.
That is very true. Yeah.
You don't expect him to grow up into Peter Cushing in 5 to 10 years, but you could see it for Ralph Bates.
Well, for what it's worth, you literally couldn't grow into Peter Cushing in 5 to 10 years because he was like 30 years older than the kid. But, maybe in 40.
Point still stands.
It's funny, I don't know if I have a lot of thoughts in this film. It's very fun little... It kind of felt like a like a 30-minute sitcom in a lot of ways.
Oh, it's very television-y. Like we said about Evil of Frankenstein, this again is a TV style take on the franchise.
Reception wise, kind of a mixed bag. Kind of what we've given it. Looks like right now it's at 56% in Rotten Tomatoes, 5.4 out of 10. The critics have a similar vibe. First hour is kind of fun, kind of falls flat. A little too much humor in certain spots, or awkward humor in other spots, so it doesn't really pay off. But yeah, it's a very average film, but it's a fun movie. Like if this one's a little trickier to watch with kids in the room, but there's no language and there's no outright nudity other than there's a photo or a drawing in the opening scene, but beyond that, a lot of cleavage, but nothing explicit.
So, who is older in this movie, Victor or Elise?
She looks older. Yeah, I guess I don't know when they would have gone off to university back in the day. So, but if she was 16, I would imagine he would be no more than he was in a school. They had to be within a couple of years.
All right, sure.
I mean, I don't know how you could. I don't know how they would put it a different way. Like, I don't think they were in college by any stretch or version of college. He's like young Sheldon. He goes off to Vienna.
Well, yeah. Even then, though, that if you were going to college in the 1800s Germany, most likely you would have been a teenager when you were doing that in those days.
So yeah, they're probably either the same age or year or two apart. So Adam, what are we going to watch next?
Fireworks shows.
I don't get to watch fireworks show.
Oh,
I get to stay inside with the dog.
Oh, dogs hate the 4th of July. All these firework holidays.
Oh, absolutely. And our subdivision does a big shebang. Or no, we don't do it, but we're next to an area where they do it. When we first moved to Mount Juliet and were rented, we put Harley in a metal crate in the bonus room. Turned on the TV real loud. Then we went down to a common area and they actually did their own fireworks show. But it upset her pretty bad, and she broke out of the crate and broke through the door.
Wow, she's a Franken dog there. That's impressive.
Well, she was frantic, and
wow,
we had to pay a little money back on that one. But so, anyways, since then, it's just better just to stay with her.
Sounds like it, man.
Well, I don't think I have any more thoughts on this film.
Well, I've got a final thought, and that relates to why have nobody ever invented patriotic Neapolitan ice cream? So we got Neapolitan, chocolate, strawberry, vanilla. I've never seen it, if it does exist. So the question is, do you substitute chocolate with blueberry, or do you get real experimental and create blue chocolate? And how would you go about that? And yet I haven't seen it. So
I'm pretty sure blue chocolate already exists in some of these fancy little chocolates that are out there.
But they don't mix it with strawberry and vanilla for Neapolitan USA.
No, I'm talking about candies. I'm just saying, like they've made the idea is there already. I don't know why they haven't made an ice cream. They do have the ice pops. At least they used to.
Dr. Frankenstein needs to get on that. Yeah, everybody knows about the popsicles. That's different.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can do that one day. Dr. Winterstein.
Yeah. Winterstein. I like that. I do wonder why they switched to Ralph and went back to Peter. Did they have greater hopes for Ralph to be the new franchise cornerstone?
So this was his third or fourth Hammer film, and on the commentaries it was mentioned that they were hoping to make him one of the major Hammer stars and heir apparent to the Peter Cushings and the Christopher Lees. I just don't think the movie did well enough. I think Peter Cushing was never offered the role, but he did visit the set. He seemed to be friendly in the pictures I saw. So I don't think he was sour towards it or anything. But like I said, I didn't see the box office money, but apparently he didn't. If he had made enough money, I'm sure they would have done another one. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, guess that's about it.
I guess so.
Until next time, this is Adam Winters and Joe Gould. We have suffered through the horror of Frankenstein.
Mm.
If you would like to do so as well, you can buy the Blu-ray or rent it cheaply. Voodoo, not Fandango.
Yeah, I prefer that. Voodoo.
All right, thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.